Muy buenas, vamos a dar comienzo a la siguiente sesión en la que vamos a hablar de la alfabetización digital. Bueno, de los
Hello, we can start with the next session in which we're going to talk about digital literacy and how telecenters have evolved from digital literacy to literacy in innovation. To start with this first session, I'm going to give the floor to Juan Francisco Delgado, General Director of Fernando de los Ríos Consortium. A big round of applause for him, please.
Uy, qué poca gente. Hola, buenas tardes. En realidad yo estoy aquí para hacer algo que no debía de hacer, que es presentar a alguien que no tiene presentación. No voy a decir el sinónimo de lo que quiere decir.
So, I'm going to introduce you to a person who's very special and is here with us in Spark.
Juan Carlos Rodríguez Ibarra is the president of the region of former president of the region of Extremadura, but not just a regular president. He was somebody who was committed, who was a visionary of telecenters. Juan Carlos Rodríguez Ibarra, I always say this, has been the only president in a Spanish region that has been in the New York Times. The only one. Why is that? Because he was the president that fostered free software. He developed telecenters in Extremadura. The rest of the regions have followed this pattern. And besides, he fostered innovation in a land where people had been trying to find a job in agriculture, given by the big landowners in Extremadura. I believe that Juan Carlos was a visionary in that regard. He was in New York Times first, and secondly, he was a president that was the president that decided to stop being president when he wanted to do that, which is different from this happening when you are sent away by the citizens. And thirdly, because he's not the usual politician, not at all. He is a politician that when he decided to stop being president, he has a busier agenda than when he was president, because he couldn't stop. I had the agenda done by my secretary, and I didn't know where I was going to until I was there. But now I have to take care of my own agenda, and I seem to hate myself because I have a really busy agenda. This is Juan Carlos Rodríguez Ibarra. It is an honor to have him here in Spark today. It is an honor also to share with him his thoughts, because he's a person that transmits plenty of things that we hear today around innovation and free software. And we wanted to have him on streaming so that he can tell us many of the things that he could tell us. So that's why I am introducing him as one of the most important things in this event. So, with no further ado, I will give the floor to Juan Carlos Rodríguez Ibarra, former president of Extremadura.
Gracias.
Can you please switch off the light, because I can't see anything here. Thank you. Good evening. Shall I move here? I can see with the light. Now, this is better. Okay. You have just heard somebody who has done a Photoshop of myself. If you put the light on me, I can't see a thing. I'm sorry, but I can't speak if I don't see the people. I was saying that the host has made a Photoshop of me. He has got rid of all the bad things. And now I come here and you will realize after my talk that I was not as good as he said. The picture was better than the reality. I thank for the invitation to this meeting. The host has said that my agenda is busier than when I was the president, but I have an advantage. I only have to smile at the people I really like. And I go to places that I like. In this particular case, I thought it was a good idea, so that's why I'm here in Granada with all of you. The title of my talk is from technological illiteracy, from technological literacy to technology. It is, again, the keyword, the buzzword. I believe that hardly anybody, at least in my country, in Spain, believes in innovation, in entrepreneurship and in imagination. It is the buzzword. Entrepreneur, company owner or business owner is a different thing from entrepreneur. There are different contexts with some analogies, but a big difference. And the law that was passed by the government in my country last Friday considers entrepreneurs both self-employed or the person that is unemployed. And this is not unemployment from my point of view. Now that we in Spain, in the Union, in the European Union, that we have this crisis, when somebody wants to provide an answer from the point of view of innovation, people say, we want solutions for now, right now. This is in the long run, long term. And when I hear politicians and business owners and they speak about entrepreneurship, innovation, new technologies, etc., I get the impression that those that do these things are those in medicine that are not real doctors. Somebody who's there but not the real solution for a healthy society. And innovation, entrepreneurship, imagination is something like something funny and joyful, and something that they do because they can't do anything else. In a report by the European Union, it is said that employment in the countries of the European Union is going to be, in the next 5 years, the following: 15% industry, 5% agriculture, and 80% services. That means that we will not manufacture anything. No, we will manufacture more than ever. But this will be done with less people than ever, because everything is robotized, everything is mechanic. In agriculture, we produce more than ever in history, but it will only employ 5% of the population. And this is even exaggerated in my opinion. Why? Because technology has also reached agriculture, the productive sector, the primary sector. I remember a speech I made in 1999 when I said that there will come a day when the farmer will be able to irrigate from his own home, and this is done today. 5% primary sector, 5% industry. So, and the 80% will be employed in services. Services where? services to companies, and services to people. This is the future. And this same report says that 50% of the supply on employment for the next 5 coming years are not yet here in the market now. They are not something that we can see now. So I carry out some reflection, having seen what happened in the last 10 years with the technological revolution, the biggest one in the history of mankind. How will society be in 2030? Why do I say 2030? Because boys and girls that started their education this very year, when they incorporate, when they become part of the labor market, when they do all the various stages of education, they will be part of society in 2030. Having seen what we've seen in the last 10 years, can anybody think or suspect how this society will be a society that boys and girls that are 3 years old will be there? It is difficult to think that it's going to be in 5 years' time. So you can imagine in 18 or 17 or 15 years. But the fact that it's difficult to imagine does not mean that we shouldn't do it. We have to do it to realize if these people are going to be received by society or if they will be rejected. If 50% of employment is not yet there, if a quarter of the employments that have been created were not there yet, how will society be in 2030? And this should be a reflection that should be carried out by politicians necessarily in the educational system. Because maybe when these boys and girls, when they are 22, 23, 24, they become part of society, and everything that they have accumulated knowledge-wise along their lives is good for nothing, because the recipient has nothing to do with the one that we think will be the one that will hold them in the future. Therefore, we should carry out a serious reflection on this so that we know what educational system do we have. But things are not going that way in Spain, because the educational reform is based basically on the memory system, accumulation of information. And I can imagine boys and girls with 3 examinations trying to memorize to move to the following cycle and the following cycle. They will accumulate information, and this is a stupid exercise from my point of view. Because today, boys and girls, digital boys and girls, have an external memory that does not force them to accumulate internal memory. The important thing is where to find things, because they can find them immediately with a tremendous speed. Something that is not understood by those who were born in analogic society, but with an ability to know where things are, to discern between what they think is good and bad information. This will make the educational system a system which is not based on analogic systems, because it cannot work. Boys and girls that sit there are digital, and the teacher is an analogic person. It is said that in big Spanish cities, as a consequence of the process of immigration, in a school there may be up to 25 different cultures, 18 breeds or races, 14 religions. All these children are more equal between each other than them and the teacher. So it is not a matter of a difference in cultures, it's a matter between the different cultures between the professor and the student. There are some psychologists that have studied the behavior of students now, and boys and girls are not hyperactive. It's just that they couldn't care less about what they're being told in this system. They couldn't care less. So this initial reflection should be carried out to develop an educational system that may certify that whoever becomes part of society in 2030 has the skills and the abilities to do what's needed then. And what will be the certificate that they will hold? They have a degree, a university degree, signed by our chancellor, saying that they are good for this or that. Mainly what the selection process has enabled them to do. Today in Spain, those who have a high mark in access to university normally move towards medicine, and this is the highest mark that you need. What was the mark? It was very high, so you will do medicine then. No, I don't like medicine. But you have to do medicine because your future is guaranteed. Yes, but I don't like medicine. They end up doing medicine and they don't like it. And then there are other kids that would like to be doctors, but it would end up doing biology that they don't like. So between those that are overqualified and those that are underqualified, we have the situation in which it is just like if somebody that is 15 or 16 years old would be very much in love of Angelina Jolie or Brad Pitt. All day thinking about if I could marry them. And since they consider that they don't have the attitudes or the capacity to do it, they end up getting married with the neighbor from the 5th floor who's much uglier than Brad Pitt. He could be a good husband, but passion for this relationship, no. So we would end up doing something that the degree says you can do, but passion will not be found there. To do something innovative, different, with passion, with motivation, you have to like it, because the system should know what is people good for, what would they like to do, what are the attitudes of these students that we have in front of us, what is their passion, what is their vocation. This is what the educational system should discover and find out, because repeating information is stupid, because this will be there in Google Glasses. And in 2 or 3 years' time, we will have a subcutaneous chip in our neck with everything there. So I can imagine the examinations when they say, leave your heads in the corridor because we will start our test. So we have to try and find out things like that. The Beatles, apparently in Liverpool, 2 boys were together. One was Paul McCartney and the other one was John Lennon. And the music professor never knew that he had half of the Beatles for 5 years in their classroom, because the professor said, this is stupid, this is not a good type of music. You have to study what you have to study. So we would like to have an educational system that finds out what are people good for, what do they like to do, what would they like to do in the future, and find out what's the passion, the vocation, etc. I have been a politician by responsibility, but I am a philologist by vocation. What I like is language. And when I stopped being president of the region, I became again professor at the university. And we have to teach them the functions of language. There are 5 or 6 You know the ones, the phatic ones, metalinguistic ones, expressive ones, etc., so on and so forth. This is what we tell students. This understands that the outer world is out there. And we can express it, we can narrate it, we can represent it, etc. But there's always something there. I can tell you how many seats we have, how many people we have here. I can even speak about how I spoke, which is the metalinguistic function. This takes for granted the existence of a reality. But what a philologist never does is to add a function which is important. Language has as a main mission to transform reality. If somebody now who's reliable enough would say, fire, fire, let's get out, the conference would be different. We would all leave, but only with 3 words, fire, leave the room, everything changes. And what about saying, well, I declare you husband and wife? Everything changes. Or if I was Simon Peres, president of Israel, and I declared the war on Iran, it would change. And Simon Peres would say, I declare the war on Iran. And the reality of Israel would change forever, and the reality of Iran. And somebody would, the headquarters of the NATO in Spain would say something about that. So language is good to change reality. And who can change reality? I said if I had the authority, if I could, etc. The leader changes reality. The leader, with the words. Only with the words. With language, you will see that life is made of language, communication. And what is language? Language is a social practice. Just like domino, football, democracy, it has its own rules. And we speak as we communicate in Spanish, and we have some rules to do it. But it could be the other way around. I am Juan Carlos, and this is the way we have in the Spanish community to communicate. Je suis Jean-Charles. So it's just games. It is a social practice that we've learned and that we maintain as a community, because if each one would have their own rules, nobody would understand it. So since it is a game, just like football, why does football have these rules? Because it was devised that way. If instead of 11 players we have 7, then it's a different sport. And if it is with the hands instead of the feet, then it's handball. So for something to be recognized, we cannot change the rules. So in order for me to be understood, I'm using the rules that make it possible for Spanish to be understood. And if I want to play football, I have to play with my feet, not my hands. So the rules that are the essence of the game are there. If I'm playing chess, I cannot make moves that are not allowed in the game. Because otherwise I would be playing a different game altogether. But playing like Messi in football, for instance, is playing differently. Strategically, he does different things from the rest of the people. So when somebody decided to devise a special opening in chess, everybody would follow it because it was good. They have not changed any rules. It is recognized that these are the rules, but this person was playing chess. But he did something that nobody had done before. And when it was proved to be successful, it was followed by everybody, and it becomes a social practice that we follow. the social practice that means doing things like it was always done. When you're phoning somebody, you say hello. You don't say, who's the bastard that is waking me up in the middle of the night. There's a social practice that is hello or whatever. We do businesses in a certain manner, we teach in a certain manner, we greet each other in a certain manner, and everybody normally follows that. But every now and then, social practices change. In other societies, it is different. When we finish eating, somebody's belching, and it's good because you're showing that it was good, but then in other places, it is bad manners. But every now and then, in the same manner, the social practice changes.
So it could be normal to drive a car talking, and now it is quite normal. Since the mobile phone was invented, people are talking on the street. And you're driving and you're talking. If somebody doesn't realize that there's a mobile phone there or a Bluetooth device, they will think, well, this person's crazy. And you see people talking on the street with a phone, but you can't see the phone, and you think, well, this person's crazy. So how did all those things change? Well, we don't know. They just changed. Nobody decided in a conscious way. This that was done in one way, now we're going to do it in a different way because it's a better way. Those who are able to change the way a society drives itself in a conscious way to address and to get to a better project, that's a leader. So we have a leadership for someone who's able to convince the rest of the people in the community to create a project, and also a leader who's able to change reality and make it in a different way. Through what? Through the constitutive rules of the game. And how can those rules be changed? Who's got the capacity to change them? There is this eternal debate on whether you're born a leader or you work to become one. A leader is someone who's able to change the social reality because it's able to read the world, because it's able to differentiate between the different elements which exist in the world, in society. When I'm walking in the street, I look at the sky, I see all the stars. And I'm sure that those who know a lot about astrology can distinguish which each star is. And those people will see loads of very different things. They'll see the Via Láctea, they'll see the different kinds of stars, constellations, and I look at the sky and I think, well, I just see an awful lot of stars, and that means that if I can only see stars, I can just make a composition of a star with a star. But if someone's able to see many other things, this person's able to make different kinds of combinations. If I cannot distinguish between a chair and a table, I won't be able to create a very pleasant dinner in which I have a table, a chair, a table, a chair. But someone who's able to distinguish as many things in the world as possible will have the biggest capacity to make different kinds of combinations. And when you can combine different elements, you can say, well, this combination which didn't exist before is the combination which allows us to transform the world. And if it's for the best, the community will adopt it, and that will mean that things are going to work. And unfortunately, there are still people who can understand that throughout the history of humanity, reality was always something physical. But in the last few years, I'm not talking about more than 20 years or maybe 15 years, reality is physical and virtual. And this is something which should be seen by everybody. If someone doesn't see it, won't become a leader, he won't be able to convince anyone that there are other possibilities for social practices which can lead us to success, to individual success or to common success if you want to endeavor in a social project. So, if this I'm saying I would have said 10 years ago, And I said, well, if you don't understand it, don't worry, because I will send what I said by mail. Everybody would have thought that they're going to receive an envelope because I would have sent a letter. But if I say that now, if I say, don't worry, if you didn't understand it, I'll send it through, I'll send it to your mail. You'll probably think that it's an email. It's something that doesn't exist physically. So the difference could be anything. Never in the history of humankind we had seen that reality has stopped being only material, only physical. So it's the greatest revolution throughout history, because all revolutions before, including the megalithic period, the fire, they were variations on the physical reality, the material reality. But now we have a new reality which is virtual, which is more virtual every day, and it's becoming less physical and more virtual, to the extent that the whole generation is called a virtual generation, a digital generation. And we should be capable of understanding that that's happening, because otherwise the generation gap, it's going to be very wide, and the possibilities for innovation and development of that new generation will come to nothing. If those of us who were able to bring all those new technologies to their disposal, if now we deny them, or we think it's something which is not linked to reality. And to that respect, I would start with democracy. Democracy for my generation was something vertical. We had the power here on top, and then the citizens, and we see each other every 4 years. And there wasn't any other possibility, because there was no possibility of communicating with the vast amount of citizens. We had the election campaigns, etc. But today, there is a part of society which hasn't seen that there is a virtual reality. They still think that democracy is vertical. Power on top and citizenship. But there is a virtual reality, and there are people who say, well, that thing that you see as a vertical thing, I see it as a horizontal thing. And I can talk to you as many times as I like. And you're obliged to talk to me as many times as I like. Because if a 16-year-old girl or boy sits in front of their computer and they talk to Beyonce or with Ronaldo, or they think they talk to them, how is it that they're not going to be able to talk about representatives of their local government or a president? Well, these people are much more important to them. So we should be capable of understanding that things are not vertical anymore. Otherwise, we will completely fail, because 4 years, it's a very long time for someone who's used to receiving immediate responses virtually. So democracy is changing, and our intimacy is changing. We all have our phone, we have our in mute, and when we leave, we will have to phone those who phoned us to say, well, I couldn't take your phone call because this and that didn't happen before. If you were not at home at 10 in the morning, you were working, and you didn't have to get home and phone someone and say, well, I'm sorry, I was working. And that's before, when people actually worked, had a job. But now, you are wherever your mobile phone is. That's your place. And before, you didn't answer your phone because you couldn't, and now you don't answer your phone because you don't want to. And denying and not responding sometimes requires an explanation. So the privacy has changed, and it has changed our concept of value. We're told, and in the Faculty of Economics, that the scarcity of things produces value. Why are diamonds so valuable? Because they're scarce. If they gave us all the mines in South Africa, then diamonds would be very cheap. They're very expensive. They have such a great value because they're scarce. And when the first Xerox fax machine was invented in the United States, the first fax machine invented was worth $5,000. What was its value? Well, none. But there was just one, so who would you send a fax to? 5,000 euros for nothing. As other fax machines were created, you can get fax machines on Sunday with the purchase of your newspaper. And now, well, I'm talking about fax machines, but this is now obsolete. With mobile phones, if I can communicate with 4,000 people or for many more people, that means that my phone is more valuable. So it's different. It costs less, but it's more valuable. So now the value is growing according to the not the scarcity, but the opposite. If Miguel Ríos and García Montero understood that the best business is in the virtually free product, so if you sell 1 million songs virtually free, that would be 1 million euros. So we change the concept of identity, and the concept of frontier is also changing. Frontiers do not exist anymore, at least not as we knew them. The frontier is a distance, a separation between those who are communicated and those who are not communicated or connected. This is the new frontier, and that is the identity. Now we don't care about the language. It's whether you're digital or analogical, whether you're connected or not. Now we don't care about languages, and even before the appearance of internet, even then we didn't care about languages. Now I have the same language, but I'm much closer. I have the same language as Aznar, but I'm much closer to Mandela than to Aznar, the president, the former president of this country. So it's the great amount of opportunities which are offered what we have to think about. All of this, I repeat, unfortunately, is not being perceived by society. And there was a law passed last week which has nothing to do, it's about entrepreneurship, and it has nothing to do with the imagination, with innovation, with entrepreneurship. Juan Francisco said that I was a visionary. And, well, I'm quite proud that I was one of the first ones who saw it, but my failure was that nobody followed me. So we started the first, but we got there the last. And Andalucía is doing it quite well. On the contrary, and the evidence for that is this forum. The 3 centers have had the mission of trying to do something with this digital divide between those who had access and who didn't have access to this great instrument, which is the biggest revolution of history. To be able to have centers. At that time we had the culture, we call them culture centers, but with the new technologies they started to be called telecenters. That work, we should really admire the people who started doing it, because that would have meant people completely outside this technological revolution, and now these people are included in it. And we're talking about people who are very highly who have a high degree of literacy, digital literacy. And those who are my age, we have to have a look at the instructions for everything, for example, because we can't do anything without the instructions leaflet. But young people are different for this. There are this new culture of not needing those instructions because they know how to do things. All the poorest areas, very small villages with 5,000, 3,000 inhabitants, they would have been left aside because no one would have worried about these people having access to these source of knowledge, the possibility to fall in love, to fight, to make friends through new technologies. This task, as I know, for what I've been following and for what I'm seeing, it's a job, it's a work which has been done properly, but we need to take new steps. And now that we know how a novel is written, we need to think about something about which to write. It's like if I'm taught the technique for writing, but I don't have a very vivid imagination, or I know nothing about the world, and so even if I have the tools, I'm not able to write that novel. So now we know what new technologies are for. We know that this digital divide is something we have to avoid, and you've done a fantastic work in telecenters, etc., and you've made it possible for many potential marginalized people to be part of this process. So now you know how to write a novel. Now you have to try to write it, and we have to tell people that with that they've learned, it doesn't mean that you can do the things that they did before quicker, but with that they have visualized and which they master, they can do things now that they were not allowed to do before. And now, thanks to the task of those telecenters, those groups, they can do these things. A few days ago, in a talk with the creator of Google Glass, I told the people listening to us, now we're working without financial statement, and we have the possibility to tick two ticks for church and for the government, and we also had the possibility to have another tick for young entrepreneurs to help them. Why don't we have this possibility to give them money, to help them risk it, to help them, to encourage them to continue risking it? We ask young people to be brave. We ask them to risk something, but we won't do anything for them. We won't support them. So there is an immense field of action for these people, which were taken from the possible marginalization of not having access to this 21st century. We have to help them know that they have in their hands the tools needed, so that if there is an education which stimulates imagination, they can make, as we were saying, projects which change justice, solidarity, and the concept of coexistence. So they can transform the world. People have a great and a very vivid imagination. You can ask a 3-year-old, a kid, a little boy, little girl, what are you going to be when you grow up? Well, I'm going to be an astronaut, I'm going to be a king, I'm going to be a doctor. When they finish school, ask them. The majority of them want to become civil servants. Who killed their imagination? The school. Because they have spent 6 hours a day there for 15 years. Because having imagination, just looking at a blackboard every day for 15 years, is just unbearable. So I would encourage the person responsible for telecenters, now that you have discovered this, please tell everybody this, as you have learned, is worth and it's useful for changing the world. It's up to you to try and to follow that slogan. As I knew, or as I didn't know that it was impossible, I tried and I got it. Thank you.
Bueno, muchas gracias por contagiarnos de esa pasión.
Well, thank you very much.